Hey everybody, I am Norman, and welcome to the second episode of Watch the Road with Norman, the podcast. This is where I take a microphone and I stick it in my car and I talk to you guys about watches while I commute to Kung Fu to teach impressionable minds what pain is. So, because I'm driving, I'm obviously not looking at notes. I have a few ideas in mind ahead of time, kind of wing it. I cannot Google things, so if I misspeak or give wrong dimensions or prices or whatever else, feel free to let me know, but my apologies for that. Tonight's episode is all about the bigs and the smalls. Watch size is kind of a tired topic, but it's an important one nevertheless. Many of us purchase watches sight unseen, and so knowing specifications and how different styles fit and our own personal preferences is a pretty important thing. So I just realized my microphone is attached to my sun visor, and so this will be very interesting. I can't lower it as I'm driving facing the sun here in just a second. If you hear any loud noises, uh-oh, that's a problem. So I recently did a video on another one of my videos on pieces and brands that are new to me, and so what happens for that is I'll see a watch or something reviewed or a brand mentioned in an article. I'll check out the photos that are in that article. Maybe I'll go to their website and poke around a little bit, but I generally don't dig in very much at that point in time. I just note down the URL and add it to my notes for that upcoming video on things that are new to me. Then when I do the video, that's when right before I do the video, that's when I kind of dig into the websites and look more closely at the pieces that I'm covering. And so this happened recently where I had a bunch of very high-end dress watches on my list. Nearly every single one was. I mean, these are $50,000, over $100,000 watch. And when I started digging into their website, I was amazed because so many of them were like 44 millimeters, stuff like that, for like fancy dress watches. They aren't minimal. They're the crazy like Jacob & Co style stuff, where they have a lot of things on their dial. They'll have the time told on a sub dial with a bunch of other stuff going on around it, tourbillons and whatnot. But they were all gigantic. I did see a couple that were like 40. There was one that was 39, I think was the smallest that I covered on that video. And so I was just amazed at how many of those were just gigantic. So everything tonight will be related to size, at least in the first half. Then I've got some other topics that I'll probably start touching on in the second half. Before I really dive in, what is on my arm today, I am wearing my Palliot Deluxe, and this is a vintage watch that's been redialed. The case is in excellent condition. I assume this has been redialed because it looks brand new. Even the case looks brand new. I don't recall there being any scratches on it or anything. But this is a great watch. I think it's 37 millimeters. It's really thin. It has a black dial on it, and it has those awesome Super Jetsons looking indicators where they're cut into the dial, so they're like a really thin pointed oval, and the dial is brass, I assume, so the markers are a gold color, and there's double markers at the top. The rest are just single super thin pointed oval sticks, and again, it's super space age looking but dressy. So it's like if you were living in the far future of Jetsons style mid-century stuff thrown into the future, and you are a boss in the office all dressed up, this would be your watch. But it runs a little fast. It's actually been pretty accurate. I've been wearing it for a couple days now. It's been a lot more accurate than when I first got it and tried winding it up. And I think it is just the position. Like if I set it dial up, it'll start running minutes fast. And it seemed to be the case with my other cheap Russian watch also. But if I set it on its side, it seems to be more, it'll keep time more like a Seiko or something. So it runs fast still, but not terribly so. However, this watch definitely has issues. I believe it's normal for these things to only wind like 5 or 6 turns of the crown or something, and that's definitely the case with this one. At least in comments that I've heard from Russian watch enthusiasts, it sounds like it's a normal thing. However, this watch it stops every now and then. So last night while I was asleep, it stopped, and I tapped it and it started going again. So there's something that it's getting hung up on. And then today, early afternoon, I found that it had stopped also. But I think at that time it had started up again, but I lost 15 minutes. And it wasn't the same time. You know, it wasn't like 3 in the morning, 3 in the afternoon. So it's not like maybe hands catching on each other, which I had happen to my Christopher Ward Sandhurst, my Christopher Ward C65 Trident had that issue. The Sandhurst has been flawless, but the C65 kept randomly stopping, so I sent it in, and they serviced it, didn't find anything wrong with it, sent it back, and it did it again, except this time I noticed that it stopped with the seconds hand right up against the minute hand, and that was when it dawned on me that the hands are getting caught up on each other. No wonder why they didn't see anything wrong with it. So I sent it back a second time and got it properly corrected, and it's been brilliant ever since. But it doesn't seem to be anything like that with this watch. So I'm just making sure that I have my phone on me and not to totally trust what this watch tells me the time is. I need to send it off for servicing, but like I mentioned in the last episode, my bank account is reeling a bit from the D1 Milano, and I need to keep that account moving forward toward my Grail watch. And that kind of leads me into one of the topics for this evening, and that is how fun it is trying to find really inexpensive watches that aren't utter garbage. The D1 Milano was fairly inexpensive. It was, ish. It was 300, but you're getting a whole lot of watch for that. It is quartz. But what I'm talking about now is, and the Marlin too. The Marlin for $200, or if you're fortunate enough to find one on sale or at a discount. My silver one was $80, but I'm talking watches down under $100, and that aren't just utter garbage or why. Unless I'm getting one to review, which is exactly what I did. I bought an Ericsson Men's Classic, and this is a tank style watch, and it was about $50. I did my video of tank style watches, and I think in the last podcast I mentioned it also. Well, it has arrived, so you are getting a little bit of a scoop for the review video that I'll be doing. I am terrible at judging the size of a tank watch by the specifications. I really have to see them in person for whatever reason. A round watch, I can get an idea of how it's going to wear and how big it'll be and all that, but a tank watch, I'm totally lost. That's why I made a trip to the big city to look at Reversos, so I can kind of gauge which size I'll be looking at once I finally save up enough for one. And so apparently the Ericsson is a case of me not being able to tell exactly how big a tank watch is going to be. So when I go onto their website, I'm looking at them and they look really retro, and I think the 20 millimeter lug width kind of threw me off, because I was looking at them and I was thinking, these look like tiny little tank watches, super vintage size and everything, and they're $50. They're quartz, so I don't have to worry about them having like a garbage mechanical movement in them or something like that. They should work fairly well because, it's quartz. The only real issue I have with them is the case is plated metal. And, yeah, that's weird, Add a little bit more to the cost and do it in stainless steel, I say, and then it would be a much more decent quality and would have more staying power. But I don't know if it was intentional decision, because vintage pieces would be plated. Some of the lower end vintage pieces are. I don't know. But the watch arrived, and it is much larger than I thought it would be. It is pretty gigantic. So if you have larger wrists, this would be an awesome tank for you, because it would look phenomenal on you. On me, because my wrist is so small, I have 7-inch wrists, and to me that seems really small. But when this watch is on, it looks really, really flat, because it just kind of sticks up on the top and the bottom as it's getting closer to the edge of my wrist there. The site says that it's 37 millimeters lug to lug, but it sure seems to wear bigger than that, because I have 40 millimeter watches and the lug to lug looks pretty natural on those. But I guess being a tank style, a tank shaped watch, really exaggerates that lug to lug, it would seem. So my only issues with the watch are really minor design points like that, and it looks kind of blockish, kind of like a domino sitting on your wrist. And I think that designing the case, either giving it a smaller case so it looks like it should be a flat watch, because it's small enough to sit solely on the flat part of your wrist. I think that would have been a good design choice. Or if they wanted to keep it at the size that it is now, I would say do some trickery of the eye and give the case kind of a sweeping, some sweeping details to it. Like maybe on the sides, have some element that kind of gives the impression that the case is actually rounded and sweeping. Maybe have the lugs tapered down toward their ends, which will kind of further enhance the rounded look to the case, so just so it doesn't look flat as it gets closer to where your wrist starts to really curve, as opposed to be a little bit flat there on the top. But other than that, it actually looks surprisingly good. I thought it would have a flat crystal, but it actually has a domed crystal, which is very interesting and does some cool distortions. It's mineral, but this is a dress watch, so whatever. I mentioned that in the previous podcast, I think. There's going to be a lot of redundancy, I think, in this podcast, as I forget what I've already talked about, and I apologize for all of that. I will try and keep topics varied enough to where I'm minimizing that. So, all right, let me cut through here. I think this is okay. A little bit of driving stuff there, but yeah, overall the watch looks really good. The cream colored dial makes it feel a little bit vintagey. It's not patinated or anything weird like that, but it does soften up the look of the watch, and I think it was a good choice. The hands are kind of Breguet style and look really nice. The font's pretty decent on there, and on the wrist it looks pretty good. I put it on a black dimodal, however that's pronounced, band that I had sitting in my box, and it looks way better than the brown faux croc strap that it came on. But from what I could see so far, that strap wasn't too terrible. It's kind of stiff, just cheap, genuine leather, but it doesn't feel like full-on cardboard, at least. And it looks alright, but I think the brown coloring and stuff would have been far better suited to the gold-plated watch than this one. I think this one would have been really good with like an espresso strap or a black like I put on it. but yeah, it looks pretty good. And speaking of tank watches, I'm shocked at how many there are out there. I remember when I first fell in love with the Cartier Tank Americaine, I was looking for similar aesthetic watches, and at that time I really wasn't finding a whole lot. Of course, I didn't really have any social media feeds that were just nothing but watches nonstop, so that's probably a big factor on it. But I really didn't see a whole lot. And I know there are a whole bunch of amazing Seiko tanks out there. Seiko tanks out there, and I need to become more familiar with those. I don't even know their model numbers or anything. I just see them come through and they look cool. I'm gonna have to check those out and maybe pick one up sometime in the future and give that a review. But yeah, they're coming out of the woodwork, you know, and bumped into an Oris tank, all kinds of stuff. So it's cool seeing that. Fun to check out the dressy tank watches, because I just love tank watches. In fact, I've already done one video, and I'm probably going to be doing at least another one featuring tank style dress watches. Maybe it'll be kind of a reoccurring theme or something. But yeah, so that is tank style watches there. And yeah, another interesting thing that came up this week, I was going to do a video on watch boxes. I could have swore that I saw a picture of a watch box where the base of it was wood and then the top was like a glass box. So it had 4 walls of glass and then the top of glass, so it was just a half box of glass sitting on a lower half of wood. But as I was looking for that, I never found it again. So I started searching for like unique watch boxes, or I think I did one for futuristic watch boxes. I was looking to see if there was any really crazy sci-fi and sci-fi / luxurious looking boxes, you know, so they're like really fancy, kind of like a modern mansion style watch box. And I was amazed at how little there was in the way of variety or boldness, taking chances. There were a few watch boxes that were pretty cool. I saw one, if I remember right, it had metal sides with big bolts in them, and then the front, top, and back were wood, like a deep dark colored wood. That one was really cool. And there was a couple that had just a glass lid and the rest of it was wood or whatever other material. And of course there were some really nice just wood ones, everything from glossy wood, piano wood type stuff to kind of handmade, real rough wood grain stuff. But they were all kind of, I don't know, tame. I thought I would see a little bit more craziness out there, and I'm gonna have to look a little bit more. So I created a board on Pinterest so I could start collecting interesting watch boxes there. And yeah, I think every now and then I'm gonna scour some more, because when I do put out that video, I want to put forth watch boxes that are difficult to come by, that aren't things that you could just Google and, oh, there's all the watch boxes he talked about. I'd like to dig deeper, so I'm gonna kind of sit on that video topic for a little while, I think. We'll see. But then again, I don't really collect watch boxes. I try and keep my collection contained in my one box. Like if I end up with too many pieces so that they're piling up everywhere else, I think and hope, instead of getting another watch box, I'll start offloading some pieces and tame the collection a little bit and keep it down to just the one box. But we'll see what happens. I may end up with a bunch of pieces that I just can't bear to part with. But yeah, you know, the watch box I own is cheap. Not cheap, it was inexpensive, but it was a gift. And it was way back in the day when I owned a couple of EcoDrive Citizens. So it has the clear plastic top on it, so that those could keep charging while I'm not wearing them. I think if I were to purchase one today, I would probably get a solid one. I don't need a clear top on it. I don't need to be seeing my own watches and wishing I was wearing a different one when I'm trying to stick to one, maybe two watches a day. Not be swapping watches every hour because I glanced at my watch box and was like, oh, I forgot about that. Oh, that watch looks so amazing in there. I need to put that on. So yeah, I would get a solid box, and I would definitely hide them from myself. So, alright, so I am approaching my destination. So I'm going to sign off, and I will be back with you once I'm done. Of course, to you it'll just be a moment, and we will continue our discussion on the other side. Alrighty. Was a great class. We played with big, huge, long sticks. All right, so the last little bit I have that is watch size related has to do with Bauhaus watches. So I was just recently revisiting the CWC, doing a re-review of it because my old video Oh man, so terrible. It was so, oh man, just terrifying. So I decided to redo it, and when I was doing that review, I was actually wearing the Stova Antia, which is also a vintage size watch, just like the CWC. But it was interesting to see them side by side because the CWC looks so much smaller. And it's all due to the case design, the aesthetics of the watch. Bauhaus watches that have cylinder-shaped cases wear huge. Seriously, they wear so much larger than whatever size they are. Especially if they have a flat crystal, if they're properly Bauhaus, right? They're super utilitarian. I used to own a Xeno Bauhaus winder that had a Peugeot 7001 in it, and it was really thin. I want to say that it was like 6-7 millimeters in thickness, something like that, but it had a 40 millimeter diameter on the case. And I remember when I first saw that thing, it was right before leaving for vacation in Florida. I got the notification right as we were headed out the door. So I quickly dropped everything, ran down the hill to the mailbox, came back up, quickly enjoyed my unboxing, put it on the wrist, hopped in the car for the airport. And when I first saw that watch, I just about had a heart attack because I thought I was playing it safe in going with 40 millimeters. At that time, I'd never put on a watch smaller than that. And was still kind of transitioning slowly away from like divers and stuff like that into more dressy watches. So 40 was safe, right? Well, as soon as I saw that thing, I had a cardiac event, just about, because it looked gigantic. It looked like a cheap fashion watch to me, which I really was not expecting. And that's just me. That is not a generality about that watch itself or whatever. That is all on me. That is my own tastes at play there, because the watch was gorgeous. It was so minimal. It just had the stick batten markers. The sub-dial was like crosshairs. It only had the 12, 6, 3, and 9. And there was no minutes track. The hands were just sticks. The dial was black. The hands were white. It was actually really, really beautiful. If it were 36, I would still own it today. But when you put that on, it wore like 42, 43, just huge. So if you have large wrists, then that's not a problem. Definitely, 40 would be great. However, if you're used to wearing 38, 39, 40, and you're getting a Bauhaus watch for the very first time, I would suggest going with the 36, because now that I own everything from the tiny little Timex Marlin, which is 34, to the CWC and the Smiths, which are 36, when I put on the Antia and even the Orion, which doesn't have a cylinder case, those two watches feel larger than my other vintage size watches, and the Antia actually feels like a 40 to me, because it is all dial. There's really there's like a millimeter and a half or something of bezel around it, and the case is cylinder, so it goes right up to the very edge of the watch. So just something to keep in mind if you, like me, are intrigued by Bauhaus watches. Just know that size is a little bit different for those than other watches. And so when in that video, I held up the CWC right next to it, and the Stova just looks large compared to it, even though they're about the same size. So for the remainder of this episode, we'll get a little bit more sentimental. Because speaking of the CWC, I was wearing it for about 3 days or so, really enjoying some time with a nice, super tough little tool watch. And Sunday I had to help move some appliances, and my brother was there to help out, and I wore the CWC because I knew it could handle it. And as we were moving something, I noticed that whatever he was wearing, whatever my brother was wearing, it was a nice bead blast to it, and so I figured he must be wearing his Khaki Field, and sure enough he was. So I had to get a double wrist shot with him. So we have the Hamilton Khaki Field right next to the CWC G10 Sapphire in a photo, and I have to say that Khaki Field looks so good, so good. I'm totally gonna have to get one. The reason that I didn't go with that watch when I bought the CWC was, one, I love the vintage size of the CWC, but even more than that, the critical thing was the water resistance. I really wanted a field watch that I could swim in and stuff, so that when I go on vacation, that could serve as a dive type watch, because I don't use bezels, so and I don't really use lume either, so a field watch would serve the purpose of what a dive watch would, and that is something that I could wear in the water so my wrist isn't naked, and just a tough little fun watch that I don't have to care about when when I'm near the water and stuff. And so the CWC, because of its water resistance, that alone right there kind of pushed it ahead of the Khaki Field. But man, when you see them side by side, as much as I love the CWC, oh, the Khaki Field just looks brilliant, brilliant. Even though it's a bit larger, it's thinner also, which is amazing. Oh, it looks so good. And the price is great on those things, so yeah, I may have to add one sometime. I need to find some stuff that I can sell. If I can find some stuff to sell, I could get one without damaging the bank. Anyway, so that was the first item. And the last topic, unless I end up rambling until I get to my destination, which hopefully will be the case, so we get a full episode. My last topic is something that crossed my mind this week, and that is when watches get infused with amazing memories. And this is about a watch that I no longer own, and I was sad that I got rid of it, and yet not sad, because it never ever got wrist time. I tried and would just take it off within minutes because I just wasn't feeling it as much as I loved it. So in my mind, that feels like abuse, just leaving a watch there, wasting away, knowing that you'll probably never ever be in the mood for it enough to warrant it. So it had to go on to a new home, and that watch was my Certina DS, which I nicknamed the Dawn Draper, even though, as someone pointed out on social media, Dawn would never wear a watch that huge. Which is actually a topic that I kind of skipped over earlier in this thing, and that's like, watch people's rudeness to other people. We are so rude. Like when someone posts a picture of some big gaudy watch that, maybe it's not my style, maybe it's not your style or whatever, but why comment if that's the case, Just like, I post a Timex Marlin, and everyone's like, is that the people don't say that, but the big watch guys, I'm doing devil's advocate, the big watch guys look at that and be like, it's a lady's watch. But anyway, it's so crazy because people will post those pictures, and then inevitably someone will be like, yeah, I would never wear that thing, but good on you, wear what you love. And what comes to my mind every time I see something like that, I just think, man, imagine if a friend showed up, he finally got himself a girlfriend and comes over so that you can meet her and he can show her off or whatever. He comes over and you're just like, I would never date that, but good on you. Like who you like, I guess. So anyway, just funny how rude we can be at times. And I had, after that person mentioned that was a seed in my mind. Every time I looked at the Certina, it looked big and bulky to me, because that seed was planted. And prior to that, I was blind to that because I just saw I saw that silver ring around the edge of the bezel, which kind of reminded me of the tuxedo dial that Don Draper wore. I think it was a JLC in the first season, tuxedo dial. And when I got the Certina, I didn't know exactly what everyone on Madman was wearing. I didn't know anything. I just knew it had the cool ring around the edge of the bezel there, kind of like a pull router-ish aesthetic. So I bought it, nicknamed it the Don Draper. And I wore that watch on one of the, is it 3 now? Trips that I've made to Vegas with my brother and his wife. And so we've done like the double date trip to Vegas. And that was the year that I had, we stayed at, oh, my memory is so terrible. I think that was the trip we stayed at, oh, I'm totally spacing on where we were for that one. It wasn't the Delano, maybe it was the Mirage. Yeah, maybe it was the Mirage, but we were in a room that felt like a suite. It was huge. And so we brought our suits and everything. We were gonna just play up the whole like Mad Men / James Bond thing, and the Certina was there for that trip. And the crazy thing is afterward, that was one of my all-time favorite vacations. Like every time we go to Vegas with them, it gets better than the last one, and each trip is just the kind of thing that like just pops into your head and you're like, oh, that was so good, such a good time, like effortlessly fun from start to finish, absolutely phenomenal. And that watch got infused with that memory to where like it was tactile. Like I would feel the excitement of just arriving at that hotel just sporadically when I glance at that watch. So I'd be going through the watch box like, what am I gonna wear? And I'd see the Don Draper sitting there, and all of a sudden, boom, I feel the excitement of walking into your hotel room. You've just arrived. It was the craziest thing. I was right back there in Vegas. Yeah, so that was one thing that I gave up when I sold that watch. But again, even though that was there, I would put it on the wrist and just wasn't feeling it. And actually, the Zeno Bauhaus winder was like that too. That became my Florida watch because we went and did Universal, and like I said, that was the trip where we were just leaving right when that watch arrived. So my very first week with that watch was in Florida. Of course, I couldn't wear it the entire time because it was a dress watch, right? So we're doing rides and splashing rides and stuff like that, but I wore it quite a bit, and yeah, from then on, that was my Florida watch. Every now and then I would put it on and reminisce about that vacation, but when I decided to go for the Stova Antia and the Nomos, that watch had to go to kind of help fund those, and I'm super happy that I got rid of it, because not because it was bad, but because the Antia and the Nomos are just phenomenal pieces, absolutely phenomenal. So yeah, so oh, and another thing, so I mentioned my brands and pieces that are new to me videos that I do every time my list grows so large that I'm like, this is gonna end up being more than one video. It's time to offload it. I think what I'm gonna add to those videos, kind of taking a cue from the Watch Reactions YouTube channel, who is gracious enough to do a shout out to one of my videos. So what he does there is every week or so he'll do a recap of various videos and stuff on YouTube, which is just awesome because not only is he giving viewers information and stuff, he's also giving shout outs to fellow YouTubers and stuff, and that really means a lot, whether your channel's larger, your channel's smaller, whatever it is. And so I was thinking, as my channel grows and stuff, at some point I'll be in a position where giving a shout out to someone will actually be a helpful thing to them, because I've grown large enough to actually send people their way and help out. So I think when I do those videos, I will tack on like a shout out to 3 different people, whether that'll be other YouTube channels or maybe someone on one of the other social media feeds or whatever, but just give a shout out to someone else. And I don't even think I'm gonna limit it. I'll give shout outs to people who are bigger than I am, because hey, if I can send 1 or 2 people to them and they follow them or subscribe to them, then I've helped them out. And the whole watch nerd community is super cool. I touched on that in my last podcast when I was talking about social media feeds and whatever I can do to help others. It was a good reminder to me, because my problem is I am a busy person. I'm constantly doing stuff, making stuff, and what happens is I have my nose down to the grindstone, so to speak, and unfortunately don't think about, hey, you know what, I need to be doing some cool stuff for other people, blah blah blah, instead of just trying to keep up and keep up with my schedule and stuff. Instead of getting kind of absorbed in that, I need to take a breather and think about what I'm doing for other people and stuff like that, like be actively becoming more selfless type of a thing. So I'm going to tack those on there, and hopefully that will kind of help in my little way. So I am approaching my destination, so I'm going to wrap it up, and hopefully this was entertaining for you, and if it was cringy, which I'm sure it was, hopefully in time that will smooth out and it'll become more and more enjoyable. And in time I'll kind of experiment with the sound too, so that we can get that going. I don't mind little bits of background noise and stuff. I mean, that's the whole idea, is I'm in a car driving around talking to you, but where the mic cuts out, kind of like in the last one at the very beginning there. Oh, and of course I made the mistake of re-rendering that one and publishing it without double checking it. So I ended up publishing a podcast with no sound. That makes sense. So I guess that was a very zen podcast there. But hopefully in time the sound will improve and the conversation will become smoother and less cringy. And if you have any topics you want me to chat with you about, feel free to hit me up on all my different social media feeds, and I will talk to you in the next podcast. Have a good one.